Up until this point in the show, we've mostly discussed topics that are relevant to worldview, topics that can be explained by either theism or atheism. But what about those subjects that don't neatly fit into a worldview category? That's right. Today we're going in depth on the topic of aliens, paranormal experiences, and the unknown. Hey, I'm Bailey.
I'm Michael.
And I'm David.
And welcome back to the Facing the Gates podcast. Hopefully you don't hear that plane that's landing apparently right outside of my apartment that decided to just land. It's great. Perks of living near an airport.
Hey, I'm surprised I haven't heard a helicopter.
Same here. There's been a lot of helicopters, I guess, heading to the forward or the site.
It's because of the aliens, dude.
It's not nuclear, it's aliens.
Nuclear aliens.
Yeah, I was going to say that, dang it. Okay.
We're storing their pee.
Okay.
It tastes delicious.
Stop. All right, anyway. We're going to just go ahead and dive right in. This episode is about aliens and ghosts, to be fair. But it's about aliens. So, taking worldview out of the question, do you believe in aliens?
It's hard not to bring worldview into it because I believe that if there is one form of intelligent life, the idea that there could not be any more forms of intelligent life is kind of crazy. So I do believe that it is possible there are otherworldly beings, aliens, little gray men. Yeah. But I don't know 100% for a fact, of course.
Right. What do you think, David?
Yeah. Glad you brought up the kind of idea of sentience because, I mean, we found like microorganisms and stuff, for example, on Mars and like the frozen water. But sentient life forms, not yet, though. I think it's just as possible.
Is
organisms
bacterial, or are microorganisms, are they alive?
Well, these were fossils of them.
Okay, well, the question is, do they live? Are they living entities? Are they like, do they have life in them? Obviously, they're dead now, but...
Yeah, they used to have life. So
okay.
Technically they exist, but if in kind of the modern viewpoint, we think aliens, we think sentience. So that we don't know, but I think it's reasonably possible.
I'll keep that in mind.
How about you, Bailey?
So here's my super diplomatic answer. I don't know. Maybe. So
we're all kind of on the same ladder. We're actually all on the same page.
Yeah. So I got lunch with somebody. Ironically, this was after church, and we got on the topic of aliens somehow. Because his dad's a big fan of, like, you know, he knows a lot of the alien stuff. He knows about, like, you know, all the different sightings and the history of it and stuff like that. So he's super into it.
It's a big Cold War kind of thing because there's a lot of stuff that like we've had where it's like, yeah, that was just Russia or the US doing something stupid. And then there's stuff like, who knows?
Right. So, I mean, I guess it's possible. Like Michael said, it's kind of hard to believe that. Well, it's also hard to believe, but also not, that we're the only intelligent life forms in existence. And like you said, it is difficult to take worldview out of the question because it is it is one of those questions that is intrinsically related to worldview. So I think I'm actually just gonna like pull the worldview question back into it and say, like, what would it mean for your worldview if aliens did exist? You know, like, would that disprove your worldview? Would it prove it? Would it make it more complicated? What do you guys think?
Well, see, my worldview is already complicated as hell. There's a lot of questions being asked and answers searched. I don't think it would honestly change too much because I leave my door open for any possibility, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. What about you, David?
Yeah, I mean, it would, kind of like Michael, it would change it and complicate it a bit, but in what ways, it's kind of hard to figure out unless it, actually happened. Because then there's the other questions. Okay, how did they come about? What happened here? And all that.
Right.
Kind of asking the same questions we asked earlier in the series.
So for me, I think there's a couple different ways that certain Christians will go about this. Like, some of them will say it's completely incompatible with Christian belief because this, I don't know if this is entirely true, but from my perception, the types of Christians that will say that it's impossible for aliens to exist because my worldview is true, essentially, a priori, assuming Christianity is true, therefore aliens don't exist. Those are the types of Christians that put a heavy burden, a heavy amount of weight on penal substitution. And they are the ones that say, like, well, Christ died for all. So, if these aliens existed, then, there's all sorts of theological questions that come up with that. Did God create those aliens? Are they spiritual entities? Was Christ's death salvific for them? If you want to frame it in that way, I wouldn't necessarily, but that is kind of a way oftentimes it is framed. So there's a lot of questions that come into the play as to whether or not if there are any logical inconsistencies within a worldview given this new information that aliens exist potentially. So I personally, I don't see that there is a problem with the preposition that aliens exist and the preposition that God exists necessarily. I think maybe our understanding of the two might change, but I don't think that they're necessarily incompatible because, these alien life forms, they could be, there are some people that have even said they're not even aliens at all. They're just demons in different forms. I don't personally buy that, but I think, it's an interesting hypothesis at the very least. I think, it's possible that it could be angels, spirits of positive forces. It's also possible that they are just other organic life forms like us that God also created and that God also gave them their own instructions, their own Torah, their own Christ. And I guess that's where it gets complicated, is because people will say, oh, well, we have this formulated idea of the Trinity. So when you insert a clone of Christ or another Christ, maybe it's the same Christ, because that would throw things off if it was a different entity, different Christ. Anyway, there's a lot of really different rabbit trail questions we could go with there.
Yeah, the way I look at that is, and I'll say on the Christ thing, Christ was the physical embodiment, was God's physical vessel of sorts, right. Is at least the way I'm understanding it. And so it would make just as much sense not to sell an omnipresent, all-knowing being, not to sell him short on creating other intelligent life forms and guiding them as well. Because if, all knowing, all powerful, it's like the free will. By saying, it's like when some people would say we don't have free will. That's in and of itself selling an all knowing being short.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're going to sell your God short, that's kind of counteractive in my eyes.
Yeah, so I would say that I would be inclined to say that there definitely isn't another Christ for aliens if they were to. This is a weird conversation, but there's definitely only one Jesus.
Yeah,
I can confidently say that. But it's also, then there's another question we have to ask is, are these aliens sinful beings that need some sort of repentance and the way that they live their lives? Do they live by the same rules, that air quotes on rules, that we live by? Yeah, so I mean, the issue is this is a very big hypothetical question, and we have a lot of hypothetical questions upon hypothetical questions, which give you more hypothetical answers, which leave you with less than you would want to know for concrete. So it's really just a fun thought experiment. But anyway.
And one thing I'd like to say, maybe we're the sinful ones that needed salvation. Maybe in a different, let's say, universe where there are sentient life, maybe Adam never gave Eve the apple.
I mean, that's what I'm saying, is it's possible like aliens just haven't sinned and therefore haven't been affected by the fall.
Well, and humankind will change that real quick.
which is likely why they wouldn't interact with, directly at least ways, with humanity, because like that could be why this could be a whole like origin story for guardians, for like spiritual forces that are simply observing things and that aren't necessarily interacting and intervening, but they are unaffected by the fall and therefore they are on a much higher spiritual plane. That's obviously a spiritual route if you want to take that route. There's other kinds of explanations for this,
Oh yeah, there's tons. But
right.
None of them are concrete because we don't know. And that's the beauty of it.
We don't have concrete evidence. I'm not saying that there is no evidence for aliens. I guess this is a separate question, because like the question of if aliens exist, that's one question, right? But then we have this weird aerial phenomena that we are witnessing in the skies, phenomena that is so common that even the military is noticing it. So there's obviously something going on there. Now, the aliens hypothesis, that's one of them. That's one of the explanations. But I think that's a little bit of a stretch. It could also be foreign technology. Like some people have said maybe it's demons. Maybe it's something else. Like maybe it's Atlantis people. I don't know. There's all kinds of things that it could be.
Like maybe it's a shadow government.
With especially the phenomena of like alien sightings or alien ship sightings happen a lot during the Cold War. The US and the USSR were doing spycraft and all sort of kind of experiments within espionage, aerial, and everything. So, and they keep them papers quite closed and shut.
Yes. Yeah. Right. So go ahead.
No, we're waiting on some more.
When you look at some of these, there are tests and experiments that are even hidden from a lot of people in the military industrial complex. Like with the B-17 bomber, if I'm remembering right. Most of the military bases in America didn't even know this was a thing until they were told, we need people to learn how to fly these. It's not detectable on radar. It is created to be supersonic. We are ready to dispatch these. And that was, obviously, that's not the explanation for every phenomena. Well, that's just one that has had explanations, especially over military bases and public areas that are heavily populated or have a strong nuclear presence or natural resource presence. Like, there were sightings, I want to say, even over SRS, where like, what in the hell is over this bomb plant with so many bad chemicals and things you don't want to explode?
And our sister site is later, Los Alamos.
Yeah. And then decades later, it's like, oh yeah, we were testing this aircraft and we didn't want you guys to know because you guys can't keep quiet.
Yeah. So I think I think the most likely explanation for the aerial phenomenon, at least right now, I think is more than likely foreign technology or our own technology that we don't know about. I think that's probably the most likely thing about what's going on with that. Now, like I said, the aliens question, that's a completely different thing. Is it possible that the aerial phenomena and the alien phenomenon are the same thing? Maybe. But right now, we don't have enough information to say whether or not that is the case.
I really hope there are aliens, though. That'd be pretty lit.
Yeah, our understanding of the universe would change quite a bit if aliens existed.
Yeah, and
it would. Go ahead.
I've talked with some people who would consider themselves Christians that believe that if there are alien life forms, that maybe, and I'm not sure who else would subscribe to this, that maybe heaven and hell are both spiritual and physical places. And I don't know. I've never looked into that. So I obviously don't really know much about that. I've always seen them more as a kind of outside this realm thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always, fun to ponder and try to throw that in your worldview and see where it leads, even if you don't necessarily believe it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know if there's just a lot of interesting questions that come up with the aliens topic, because it's like, I mean, particularly like the theological questions, I think are really the interesting ones. But it is purely speculative and hypothetical at this point because we just don't have enough information. I don't think it would, by default, make Christianity not true. I think it would make things more complicated. But beyond that, we can't really know until we have more information.
It would be something that would be expanded upon.
Yeah. And then, but as I've seen what some Christian traditions or denominations, they leave room for, things that could happen, like with the more mystical things, or even, let's say, aliens. They don't sell an omnipresent being short, for lack of better words.
Right. I'm not particularly a fan of putting God in a box and telling God the rules of what he can and can't do.
Exactly.
And frequently God breaks his own rules anyway. So, it's you really can't do that.
He's the one who makes the rules. And like with the English language, he's the one who breaks the rules.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I know this has kind of been, I guess, like a short topic on the talk on the aliens thing. I don't know if there's much else to say about it, though. Is there anything else we have that we might want to expand upon on this?
Yeah, not that I know of. Pretty much everything we've kind of could talk about. Well,
I feel like we talked about this before, like off the mic, but I don't know how much more in depth it was.
Now, question. If there is evidence of alien life, do you think we as a society, humanity as a whole, would be able to take that in? Or do you think we would all freak out? I mean, we see how we react to a pandemic or wars or terror. How do you think humanity is ready for that? And will we ever be ready for that if that is the case, that there is?
It will either unify us or destroy us. Because, say, kind of the grand old thing, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Say if these aliens were kind of bad guys, then yeah, we'd all bond together. But if they're friendly, we're gonna try to screw each other over and be friends with them.
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on the exact circumstances. So, like, if by aliens we're talking about microbial life on Mars or something, sure,
We already know.
we're ready for that. But if we're talking about aliens that are basically like us, that have their
Sentient.
own civilization, you know, somewhere else in the universe, that are able to communicate with us, and they are, you know, if they're bros, I think it might be cool. We could talk it out. If they're hostile, then I think that's going to obviously cause division and problems. I think it's going to be overly politicized, as everything is. And I think that there will be probably very little common sense as to the way forward. But as far as the question of are we ready, I don't think that we are 100% ready quite yet. I
don't think we'll ever truly be ready.
I think the government is, you know, if that were to happen, I think the government would try and drip feed us things.
Oh yeah, I mean
to slowly warm us up to what might be coming.
If I remember correctly, they actually do have plans of action for if stuff like this happens.
Yeah, because it is a very drastic thing to just be like, hey, you thought your existence was this. Now we're changing everything you know.
The kind of scenario I'm painting, well, there's two essentially. There's one where the government lets hypothesize and say they already know Roswell was real. They've seen the little. Let's pretend they're little green men, like we all think aliens are.
Mm-hmm.
Me, in my opinion, I don't think we will ever be ready for something that shocking, even if it's drip fed to us. Because just the idea of speaking on these things can bring up controversy.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say that little green dude pops up while the president's talking one day has a little translator and goes, "Sup guys, I'm an alien." I think that would send the world into, first, political chaos. Second, realistic chaos. Most people would be freaking out.
I mean, you're right, but at the same time, I think like it's a little easier for me to grasp because I have belief in the supernatural and paranormal and things that are outside the ordinary, I guess, already. So when it comes to, like the question of aliens, for example, if, what would you think would happen if the book of Revelation started happening in this life and we started experiencing that? Obviously, it would be a tear in the fabric of life and people would be freaking out, and it would be like it would be otherworldly and it would fundamentally change how we perceive reality. However, we as a society are we're in a fairly comfortable bubble where we don't have to assume or posit anything new. We assume naturalism and a lot of things that we have learned over the years through science. And we've been fairly stable in our assumptions about the world, but it hasn't always been that way. And our understanding in previous generations has constantly been changing. So it's only a matter of time before that understanding and that bubble is burst, and we do come to some kind of some information that fundamentally changes how we perceive reality. And that's, maybe that's aliens, maybe that's something more of religious significance, maybe that's paranormal, who knows? Like, it's only a matter of time before our comfort zone is no longer comfortable.
Yeah, and I mean, we have had, maybe not to as large of an extent, but even in our lifetime, things that have changed how we perceive reality. we are simultaneously have the most information available to us in our pocket, but we also have the biggest blinders on in our pocket through media, through the internet. And we've grown up with that, so that's comfortable. But 100 years ago, electricity was a terrifying thing for a lot of people. Some people saw it as the devil, some people saw it as the next revolution. And we as humans always want to create our comfort zone, whether it's right or wrong. I mean, look at the circles we all find ourselves in. Look at the modern Protestant movements that we have discussed thoroughly. There's aspects in there to keep people comfortable with the way that they are living instead of the way that is the more proper way, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. We as a society, just if we're uncomfortable with it, we just change it. Like, look at the idea of marriage. It's not what it used to be, a lifelong bond, literally till death. There was no way out of it. And then one guy was like, I don't like that. I'm tired of killing them. I need a way out. I keep making mistakes. And society changed that. Right or wrong, they did. And so that's partially why I don't think we will ever truly be comfortable or ever truly, as a whole society, be able to grasp and understand it. Now, I think the three of us, we're pretty level-headed when it comes to a lot of things. We leave a lot open for interpretation, and we leave a lot that we're willing to give access and not deny if there's evidence.
Right.
And so cool. I think the three of us are kind of a microcosm in that, but looking at society as a whole, there's no way in hell we're ready for aliens. We're not even ready for different ideas to be conversed in public.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that wraps up the aliens part.
I've got one more question.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Is there anything in history that you would look at and go, possibly there was not necessarily divine intervention or other society intervention, but an extraterrestrial intervention? Let's say, for example,
the star of the north was actually an alien spaceship that was guiding the three wise men to Jesus.
Oh no, I'm not talking like crazy Tom shit DeLonge like that. I'm talking about, say, things that have moved society forward, like electricity, or looking at a lot of people speculate on ancient Egypt. Mm-hmm. And that there could have been some connection there when you look at things that are artifacts and things that have been found, like the jars and vases that have electrical current flowing through them due to the way they're constructed. I don't personally believe, but I can't say for obviously 100% because I wasn't there. So I'm not going to go, yes, no, maybe so.
So are you asking if they're
is there anything in history that you could see there being an extraterrestrial
influence?
Okay.
I would be less inclined to default to the extraterrestrial explanation. I would probably say there's some kind of spiritual underlying force behind some of these things, whether that's good or bad, a positive or negative spirit. Like I do believe that, we are in the midst of spiritual warfare constantly, whether we're perceptive of it or not. And that can manifest in some of the technology, that can manifest in, whatever developments that happen throughout time, and, good or bad. But I don't know anything specifically that I would say, oh yeah, that was probably aliens, because I don't think I have enough of a belief in aliens in a concrete sense to say that I that this thing was caused by aliens. So like for me to even say that, I would have to become more convinced that aliens do exist. Right now I'm kind of alien agnostic at this point. So that's
which
kind of where
I think
stand.
we all kind of are.
Yeah.
It was just a fun little thing to ask, because obviously we've all seen the shows, Ancient Aliens and all that bullshit.
Yeah.
Let's call it like it is. And we've all gone down the YouTube rabbit holes where it's aliens. Because it's interesting to think and interesting to hypothesize about and say, what if?
It's like when I memed you on that the resurrection episode, and you're like, time travel. That's why because he time traveled. Jesus is a time traveler. And I, memed you with the aliens guy and put time travel. Anyway.
Maybe Jesus was an alien.
Oh, yeah. I didn't think about that. Obviously, you should have.
There are people who believe that. There are people who believe
stupid. Anyway.
I mean, who are we to say?
I am. I'm just going to call them stupid. So, anyway.
Maybe God took a alien body, formed it to look like a human. Was like, look, man, I know a human body's going to be ruined after this.
Okay. All right. Well, I think are we done with the alien stuff? Can we move on to the ghost stuff?
For now.
Okay, cool. The alien stuff may come back later. So we've kind of discussed this topic in a previous episode. We did an episode on the paranormal way back when we kind of just started the show, but I wanted to revisit it a little bit and go a little bit more in depth. So just as a recap for people at home who maybe haven't heard that episode, do you believe in ghosts or spirits?
Yes. No.
I do. Okay, cool. Glad we covered that base. Okay, so what would it mean for your worldview if ghosts existed?
It wouldn't really change my whole worldview, since I already believe they are there. It might help form a line to wherever my spiritual path is going.
Mm-hmm.
If, a ghostie walked in front of me and was like, hey, bro, I need to tell you about this. But then I'd also have to contemplate, is it positive, negative? It would maybe help guide, but maybe create more questions. But I don't think it would innately change my necessary worldview, if that makes sense.
It's because you don't have one. It's because you're figuring it out.
I have stakes driven, but I'm building the fence slowly.
Gotcha. David?
Yeah, as we discussed, I don't believe in the spiritual. It would, because the paranormal is pretty much just the spiritual realm kind of being visualized in somewhat of a physical form, I guess you could say.
It's kind of like the spiritual realm and the physical realm interacting.
Yeah, kind of like a sixth sense, I guess you could put it as.
Yeah, if you see some paranormal thing that is irrefutable, you no longer can be an atheist, because you believe that there is now a conscious and a spirit within you.
Or just a supernatural experience where it's like, okay, the supernatural exists.
Yeah.
And that leads you down a certain road of, okay, well, there must be life after death. There must be, like you said, a soul.
Man,
and intelligence, your consciousness must not be just in the mind. So anyway,
and see, Bailey, this is why earlier I said we need a more staunch atheist. We need someone to argue with us. David is very agnostic in his atheism.
David's just like, yeah, I guess he's like,
I think this, but man, I don't know. Shit, I'm just vibing.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, we'll maybe talk about this more in depth. Since I used to be a paranormal investigator, it doesn't fit neatly into a certain category. I mean, obviously, within Christianity, you do have the supernatural, you do have angels, you do have demons, but you don't have spirits that are lingering on the earth still. So, I mean, there's different explanations for what this may be. This could be just some kind of residual spiritual energy that's left behind by the soul that we just don't really understand yet. This could be, the fact that there actually are lost souls. You could have, I don't know. I mean, there's all kinds of explanations for it. That
it could be,
and we don't really know, and we won't know until we're dead.
Yeah.
So there's no way of finding that kind of information out. Now, obviously, like when I'm talking to an intelligent spirit that's not necessarily demonic, I don't know why that spirit is there. I can't explain why that spirit is not in heaven or hell right now. It just doesn't neatly fit into that box. But what I do know is that spirits do exist because I've interacted with them. And I don't know if I've mentioned this on the show or not, but that's partly why I'm kind of okay with not doing it anymore, is because it is kind of, sophisticated as it may be, it is kind of necromancy. And you are still using scientific devices to communicate with the dead, which you're not really supposed to be doing. But that being said, I do believe that spirits exist and the paranormal exists. I just don't know. I don't have a neat little category for it, essentially.
Yeah. And there's been two kind of schools of thought that I've heard from a couple people when it comes to it. One leans itself more into this. They're waiting to transition. It's sort of a limbo of sorts, not necessarily limbo. And then
that's a fairly traditional kind of belief.
And then there's also one where it's like, this is a punishment. This is what you're going to do this. And also, it could be maybe that the time you experience it is more so put forth to you for a reason, or in connection to an event. Like, I've had that happen, but I don't have answers for it.
Yeah, I believe there are different types of spirits, right? So you do have actual demons and angels, but then there's also intelligent spirits that are not necessarily demonic, but that can interact with you. Then there's residual spirits that are essentially like on a tape loop. They just kind of live this part of their life over and over again. This is the kind of spirit that you're going to see in the top window of the second floor at 1 p.m. every day, doing the same thing, looking out, and then they move on. And then there's also poltergeists, which are known to throw things.
I've experienced the last two several times.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's not necessarily an exhaustive list, but these are the main types that I've run across. So anyway, I am actually going to hand this over to Michael to handle the remainder of this episode to kind of direct the conversation. And if you want to ask questions of me, or if you guys just kind of go wherever things go.
All right. This is a question that obviously, David, you're not going to have an answer for, but this is for more me and Bailey right here. What was the strongest emotional experience of the paranormal that you have either witnessed or been a part of, and how has it affected you in your view? Is there any lingering effects, anything that you think about long term from this experience? Or is it more of like a one and done?
So I will say, because when I tell people I'm a paranormal investigator, they're like, oh, tell me your ghost stories. And I'm like, okay, well, where do you want me to start? And so I after having done it for so long, I did kind of get a little desensitized to, I'm like, okay, well, the flashlight cuts on. Okay, the battery's dead, whatever. Okay, same shit. This happens all the time. So it did kind of get a lot of ingrained, but there are a few things, I think probably specifically the most emotional experience that I had. We were this was with the paranormal team, Lost Souls Paranormal. We were in a plantation house, and this plantation has a lot of history to it. There's a lot of spirits that are believed to be lived there. There's supposedly a doctor that kind of is a residual spirit that people have seen in the windows. There's at night, sometimes people will hear laughter of children. There was one time where we caught on the digital recorder what sounds like horses' feet like clopping. There's all kinds of spirits that are believed to be there. So this one night, one of the members, his name is Glenn, he decided that it would be a good idea to dress up in a Confederate uniform to try and see if he can't stir anything up. Because we'll use things like trigger objects, like we'll bring in like a doll from a different era to see if we can't get a spirit of that era to interact with it or draw it out. And so essentially that was the idea, that he's going to dress as if he were from a different era to kind of trigger something. And so this did trigger things, and this is the kind of thing that like you can't really catch on camera, and it's really hard to explain to someone, but it was a very emotional experience specifically. So we were asking yes and no questions, and we would use the flashlight as a response mechanism. So we would have turn the flashlight on for yes, turn the flashlight off for no. And so, or we would also use like the K2 for that, for example. Like we could, for yes, make the K2 go off, for no, don't make it go off. And we would get fairly reliable answers with this. So we would ask questions, and through the process of asking limited yes or no questions, we learned that the spirit we were talking to was a young girl by the name of Elizabeth. She was trying to find her father. She was looking around in this plantation and just couldn't find him. And so the reason she couldn't find him was because her father is on a different realm. It is a different type of spirit. So she's an intelligent spirit. Her father is a residual spirit, and they just don't have that any way of contacting or communicating. So that both spirits are there, but only one is actually communicating. So she, apparently her dad was injured in the war and was being resuscitated in the plantation and eventually ended up dying. And so ever since this moment, she's been trying to find him. When she realizes that he is dead, she goes out to the stairwell and hangs herself. And in that moment, when we learned that, there was just an intense sadness that just filled the room. And we all felt each other's energy. We all felt the hairs on our arms standing up, and we all just felt this intense sadness. And obviously, this is because, of what had played out that we found out throughout the story. But throughout the whole time, we had already been building this emotional feeling. Like we're already feeling extremely emotional. And what do you do with that? So I mean, like there are things like that happened that have stuck with me, and that have, I don't know. Like I've prayed for her. I'm like, I hope she finds, peace. I hope she moves on. I don't know what to do about that. I mean, that for many years after that, I was like, well, why don't we go back? Like, why don't we follow up? Because this is a location that we went to several times. And I was like, well, how can you just like leave her like that? Like we need to like go do something. I don't burn incense or like do something to help her, So that was probably the most emotional experience that I've had.
That is a very strong one right there. And I mean, thinking about it, there's only so much you can do even by going back.
Yeah.
And I do see how for some people situations like that would make them want to avoid or look away from the paranormal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, it wasn't, a lot of people would think like, oh, this is like probably scary, right? Like you don't want to be in the dark and ghosts and stuff. Like it really wasn't scary. I mean, like there are moments that are a little creepy and, but
But you're kind of expecting.
Exactly. It's more of like a curiosity kind of thing. Like I want to know. And like
you're not expecting
I'm more curious than I am scared.
You're not expecting to want to give that little girl a hug and cry one out with her.
Right. Yeah.
I mean it's like going to a horror film and then crying like a baby.
Yeah.
And to kind of go after that, for me personally, I didn't have a sad emotion when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of more of a relief of sorts. To preface, this is regarding my grandfather's death. We all knew it was coming. I knew he'd be dead soon once he came back from rehab. He looked like he didn't have a spirit in him. He looked like a shell of a man. And I remember sitting in me and David's bedroom and then going up because I thought I saw someone walk.
Mm-hmm.
And it looked very similar to how my sister looks. And I've probably told this before. And so I go, obviously, walk to my mom's room to be like, hey, yo, why is she going outside? What the hell? And then my mom's like, we should probably go tell him goodbye. And I was like, and I look around the corner, my sister's sitting right there. And first it's that initial shock that can't be right. How did, and you try to logically wrap your head around it. But then it was, obviously there was some sadness there, but we had been processing this grief for 2-3 years at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And it was more of a kind of a sort of peace that kind of came over like, okay, his suffering is going to end. We're going to go be with him in this time. And our great grandmother had always, her spirit had always kind of been in that house from when she died. You'd feel her tickling your feet. You'd hear footsteps in the hallway when no one else was home. And you had that sense that someone not frightening was there with you. Someone was always watching in kind of like a parental way. Someone who cared about you. And then after he had passed and I had saw this figure walk to the front door and essentially leave, there was no more of that in that house. It was a very kind of surreal thing to experience. Her leaving to go get her son and bring him wherever is kind of the way that I wrap my mind around it. And it was very oddly peaceful once the initial shock had set in. Because I had felt he wasn't necessarily there. He was just waiting for his time to come. And now, granted, I don't know how everybody else took it, but I know my mom and dad wrapped their heads around it in a similar way because we have all experienced paranormal things. And I'd say that's probably the most emotional one because you're losing someone, but you felt that someone has been reunited as well.
Yeah. Gotcha. That's a good one.
All right. For the next one. And obviously, I've pretty much answered this question with that one, but it kind of ties together. Have you ever had a paranormal experience relating to a friend or loved one that you have lost or maybe not even met yet?
I don't think I have had so I don't think I mean, other than like maybe that dream that we talked about in the last episode, I don't think I've had any paranormal experiences. But I have had dreams. And so like there was that one obviously from the last episode. There's another type of dream that I have every now and then. I don't want to put that on air. We can talk about that later, but
okay. Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think I have actually. I don't think I've had any paranormal experiences relating to people I actually know.
Have you ever had the feeling, this is something that I do, and I know my mom does, sometimes you just need to go visit someone's grave and talk. And for me personally, when I do that, I feel that there's something more to that than just talking. Feels like, and it could be coping.
Communicating directly is what you feel like.
Yeah, it feels like they're listening. It's like when you pray, you're directing that conversation to God.
Yeah, so I don't. This is more like a spiritual thing. Like I haven't had necessarily the urge to like go to somebody's grave or something, but I have had like a very strong spiritual urge that like I need to tell this person this thing, or I need to do this thing right now, and it's like extremely important that I do it. And yeah, like 9 times out of 10, I need to do that thing. And I do believe that I believe that's the Holy Spirit guiding in some of those instances. There are other, it's difficult because you can be self-deceptive and really get into your head about like what you want. And so, well, you know, so it does get complicated sometimes, but there have been definitely times where I feel like there's a supernatural urge to do something for a certain reason.
Yeah. And obviously it could be just self-coping, or they could be it's hard to quantify these things. All right. For the next question, tell me if you had to pick one, the one experience, or in David's case, lack of experience, that helped form your belief or disbelief in the paranormal.
So for me, growing up, I was always fascinated by the paranormal TV shows and always wanted to, know what it was like. And I saw like, oh, well, these people are ghost hunting. And, I just kind of assumed that the paranormal existed, but I never really knew until I experienced it, I guess. And so I was like, well, to put it to the test, I have to actually experience the paranormal. So I ended up joining a paranormal team at the age of like 12 or 13, or probably some age that was way too young. But during this investigation, it was a private location. It was at somebody's house. Basically, they were having some issues. Like the remote would disappear and their daughter would feel very agitated in her room, like there was something bothering her in that room. So we went, and this was my first official investigation with the paranormal team. There's like, I think 3 of us, 3 other people plus me. And then, we set up our cameras and ran it back to the nerve center, and like it was really cool because it's like it's like in the TV shows, right? And so my hazing experience was they wanted me to go into the most active / haunted room and ask questions by myself. And I was like, okay, fine, I will do it, but I need Lisa to stand outside the door because I'm freaked out a little bit. I'm a little uncomfortable. So I took a flashlight. This was one of the common tools we would use. We would basically, it's one of those twist flashlights to twist on. We would twist it a little bit so that it's just barely on, and you would put it on a dresser, tap it, and it would turn on. You could tap it again and turn it off. So it's a little easier to manipulate. You have to be careful and get it just right because sometimes the vibrations in the floor could set it off. That's one thing we always try to do is make sure we're debunking anything as much as possible. So I'm just sitting in this dark room on this girl's bed with a flashlight on her dresser, asking questions, seemingly talking to myself. And I ask a question and I'm like, well, if yes, then can you turn on the flashlight? And then the flashlight turns on. And my jaw dropped because I was like, I had never experienced anything like this before. And all of a sudden, this light is on. And so I'm like, okay, thank you. Can you turn the light off? Turns it off immediately. And I'm like, okay. And so I, continue to ask questions and everything. And that was probably the defining moment for me because that was like, everything before was in theory and abstract, like these are other people's experiences, but now I've actually had my own experiences. And so like that was the first piece of evidence that I'd caught. There was obviously moments in other locations where I would feel things that you can't really empirically verify, kind of like the other story I had told. But yeah, those were probably the things that like solidified my belief, like, okay, this is real. This is actually happening because it actually happened.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'd say what kind of solidified my beliefs in the paranormal, because this was after that emotional one about my grandfather passing, because I couldn't really decipher if that's more of a spiritual thing, as in heaven, hell, or if there's something else. Mm-hmm. I would say with my first 2 or 3 weeks working at the old hotel me and David used to work at, I was in the basement clearing stuff out because the basement constantly flooded, and there was stuff in there from years and years, and it was an absolute mess. We had rented a dumpster. We had to empty this thing out essentially. And I remember near the tail end of it, obviously I'd felt that, there was something else there, but I figured maybe it's just because it's old. Maybe, there's other things that could be affecting. Who knows? I could be getting carbon monoxide poisoning for all I know. This place is ancient. I put a putty knife onto the wall on a nail, and the nail went at a like a 45-degree angle. There's no way this putty knife is falling off once it is at the end of the nail, because there's a good 2-3 inches past the handle. I put that on, and I go turn around to go throw away a carpet cleaner and a floor buffer. This thing gets thrown at me. Thrown. And I'm not talking a light throw. I'm talking this thing went past me, and I was a good 15 feet away. And there was just this unsettling feeling. And the running joke between me and everybody is if we had something happen like that, we would go walk upstairs like, this is yours. You can, I'll come back later. Okay. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And I'd say working at that hotel as a whole and being as mobile as I was doing maintenance or being a houseman, helping housekeeping, being as mobile as I was and going in places where a lot of people didn't go. And I would have to go in these places even in the dead of night, like up to the attic, down in the basement, And I spent a lot of time working in these areas. So in a sense, I felt like they knew that I was there and that I kind of know that they're there. And so I would try to build this, hey, look, I'm here for 5 seconds. Don't throw shit at me. Or
yeah.
And granted, weird shit still happened, but I was very vocal to them. Hey, fuck you.
Yeah.
Or, hey man, let's not do that today. I want to go home. And so I'd say just my experience in working in that hotel as a whole really cemented my belief in the paranormal, which I am so sad that hotel's not open right now, because I would love to take you in there and show you where all this stuff happened.
Yeah.
And also watching the different paranormal teams come through, and they would always stop in the same area on the second floor and on the third floor. And that's too much more than just coincidence, because the room numbers had been changed, the room layouts had been changed. There was no way to line up what had happened 100 years ago or 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Or people would get a weird feeling being sometimes behind the bar once the bar closed, because somebody tried to jump out the roof and behind the bar was the pool and he obviously missed it.
Yeah. When, what's interesting is with the paranormal team, a lot of the times, if we have somebody at Nerve Center and they're watching the cameras, they'll pick up orbs, which are basically these little round spheres that, move around on the screen. The way you can tell a difference between an orb and a piece of dust is an orb has a mind of its own. Sometimes it glistens. Sometimes it moves significantly differently than dust. And what orbs are, it's just energy. It could be a spirit. It could be just raw energy. We don't really know what orbs are. But, there will be times where someone's at Nerve Center looking on the camera while someone's investigating. They'll ask a question and then they'll look around, and then the person at Nerve Center will page the person doing the investigation and be like, hey, the direction you just looked, I know you can't see it, but there was an orb there. And that kind of thing happens way more often than you would think.
Oh, yeah. And
Dave, sorry, go ahead.
Speaking of cameras, my general manager it was just a black and white security camera.
Yeah. That
was connected to Wi-Fi. And
oh yeah, the one on the
it was in his office for a while. And sometimes you'd see the cabinet doors open just a little bit and then quickly close, and it's like, that's crazy.
That is.
Or
nuts.
You'd see people would drop the little mint wrappers. And you would see as if someone's walking over them.
Wow.
I'll have to get with him to see if he still has any copies of that, because that shit was crazy. But we also use that to play pranks on people, because there was a moth that would break in and fly around, and the way it picked up on the light, it made the moth a circle. And so we would fuck with people and go, oh, you see? And it's like, we already know there's ghosts in there. Don't freak me out. I was at the front desk during this time. Obviously, David wasn't phased.
Yeah, David, what, to kind of flip that question on you, what was the lack of experience that helped form your disbelief in the paranormal? Is he there?
I can't tell if he's frozen.
I think he's frozen. The Wi-Fi went out.
Oof. We'll have to continue this show without him.
Yeah.
If he gets back, we can touch back base.
David is dead. Well, not dead, but he's frozen on our screen. So it is.
Yeah. I honestly couldn't tell if he was frozen or not.
Yeah, well, he always looks like that. So anyway.
Yeah.
David doesn't exist. I'll let you continue.
All right. And I know we've talked about this in private, and this one may be out of order, but is there any phenomenon that you have experienced that made you feel as if there was a paranormal experience, even though you know now that there wasn't? So if you'd like for me to give an example, I'm more than happy.
Yeah, you go ahead and give yours first.
Okay. When at the last hotel I worked at, I was the licensed pool operator, and I was the only maintenance person. So that meant I had to work on everything from the industrial washers, dryers, the pool heaters, the pool chemicals. Everything was kind of my roundhouse, and it was only after I go, it's not fixable by me, you need to hire someone, they'd hire someone. Well, I was working with the former maintenance guy on getting this pool heater up and running. And what we didn't know is that these pool heaters were known for being faulty on their exhaust flumes. Me and him got so wigged out, we had to leave because it felt like there was someone else in the room kind of taunting us of sorts.
Yeah. It's like a paranoia.
And it was constantly looking around your shoulder thinking you heard something move or you felt something. And so we had left the door open and walked out. And when we had got back in, we looked at the faulty carbon monoxide alarm and see that the level was 5 times higher than what the level that is safe to be around for any period of time is. We were suffering from acute carbon monoxide poisoning, and that created that paranoia and that thought that something else was there. And that's something that whenever people are extremely forgetful or have that paranoia or things, that's one of the first things they're told to do is check carbon monoxide, make sure you have a detector. And so that's one of the common things that can lead to false positives.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we always try and debunk things as much as possible. We don't want to attribute anything and everything to the paranormal because that decreases your credibility when you say when you cry wolf on everything. So there is one phenomena that is known, fairly well known. It's kind of an EMF paranoia. You can, so for example, if you're going down a narrow hallway with a bunch of electrical boxes, that the EMF frequency that those electrical boxes are giving off can cause you to feel paranoid. This happened at one of the locations we actually investigated, where there was like a power unit outside of the house, and then there was like the washer and dryer, and then there was another strong source of power. So these 3 things were kind of triangulating high EMF frequencies, and the girl was wondering why people didn't want to stay in the front room because it made them feel weird. Well, you're going to feel paranoid because there's a lot of high EMF in that area. So that kind of thing, that's why we go around with K2s and check along the walls before we actually investigate, because typically, things that are going to give off EMF, your TVs, your monitors, your electrical devices, basically, anything that you would expect would give off electric frequencies. So we do a sweep just to make sure that there aren't any weird, funky electrical problems. For example, in one place we would have the K2 on the floor, but when the power cut on, you could see the light flicker because there was power that ran beneath it, and that would cause the K2 to flicker. And so these kinds of things, like, you would want to make sure you don't have any false positives with regard to your actual evidence. And yeah, there are natural phenomena that can make you paranoid or think that it's supernatural, but it's really not. It's just some other thing.
Yeah, it's not a coincidence, but it's a false positive of sorts.
Right.
Okay. That's exactly what I was wanting you to say. Because, again, in the hotel, the electrical was ran through the basement.
Mm-hmm.
And so, at first, I was, you look at everything that could be, and then when you get something thrown at you, you're like, okay, this place is really haunted.
Yeah.
And to kind of branch off of that, I know this is so professional, but I like to bring up discussing the public validity of the paranormal due to people having mental episodes, drug-related episodes, or false positives that over the years we have seen become more prevalent in either the news or media, or even people just talking about this, because it's something that does, as you said, it can take the validity away from actual paranormal experiences. When you got some nut job off of a 7-day bender on meth going, I see ghosts and aliens and shadow people.
Yeah, sometimes it can be like mental delusions and other disorders that aren't necessarily paranormal, but could be a psychological phenomena. It could still be spiritual in nature, but it may not necessarily be like what you would think of as ghosts or paranormal necessarily.
Yeah. And I think that's, and also the way the paranormal has been portrayed, even in them ghost hunter TV shows, when some of them have been found to be really bad fakers, like awful.
Right.
And
yeah.
setting things up to get more of an effect or this or that. And that's not taking away from some have been recorded, but I think things like that can do a great disservice to the idea of the paranormal and the idea of something greater, because, again, like with a religion, if you believe in something and then you find out, oh, this is the logical explanation for that, or these guys are faking it, it makes you want to rebel and turn away from that idea, even if you do think it has validity.
Right. So there was definitely a lot of, and this was one of the things that we had to fight with, particularly in the Bible Belt, but also just in general. We have to, as in the paranormal team, we had to kind of prove to people that we were legit and that we're not just a bunch of random jackasses breaking into places. So we would obviously get permission from the locations before we go in. And we would also try and show the evidence that we got to prove to them, like, this is legit stuff. We have tried debunking things. We have tried this and tried that. And like, we couldn't get this phenomenon to be recreated. So it is difficult when you have reality TV and they really only care about getting paid and making sure that they get views. So that kind of obviously detracts from the validity of the paranormal in the public sense, because people will see, oh, well, so-and-so faked it and so-and-so did this and so-and-so did that. So you're constantly fighting that, because there's obviously a natural innate skepticism to the paranormal. So yeah, it's you're in the paranormal world, you are fighting against skepticism, and you do kind of have to have your own evidence and prove your case, essentially.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of like with religion. We look at what's happened with television preachers and things like that, is really taken away and done a great disservice to religion as a whole, because you see all these fake phonies preaching this and saying this, and then when you catch them in person, it's like, I've stashed money in my walls. I don't care about you. I take your money and buy brand new $1 million cars.
Yep.
You gotta love them. But then when you have a real experience with someone who is legitimate, like speaking with you on the paranormal or the preachers that we have interviewed, it really kind of shows the other side of the coin. Like, there is validity to this. It's just in public media, we want to throw around and create a good product. We don't care about the truth.
Right.
And so, kind of not necessarily branching off that, but do you have anything else to say on that?
No, I mean, you're always going to have your bad actors in anything. But yeah, I mean, not everything. You can't always assume something's paranormal. So you do have to apply some degree of skepticism to any claim. That's really pretty much just it about that.
Take everything with a grain of salt and do your research.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And we might have lightly touched on this one earlier, but what do you see the paranormal as due to your beliefs? Is it a bridge from the spiritual to the physical? Is it a place where demons inhabit? Is it something in between?
Yeah. Yeah, so I kind of answered this somewhat. Like, yes, I do believe that hell exists. I do believe that heaven exists. I do believe that, like, these are places, if you can even put it that way. They're experiences that we have. Maybe they're physical places, maybe they're not. But even when you get into the spiritual realm, like, what even is a physical place? Because we define physical place as like something concrete and natural that we can experience, and like obviously you're going to be experiencing things after this life. So is that physical in the same sense? I don't know, but yeah. So I believe essentially in these aspects, but I think when it comes to the paranormal, and I don't really have a full working theory of what it is, I think there's kind of this parallel. Well, there's obviously, okay, so there's actually different components of this. There's hell, and then there are these ideas, this kind of idea in the paranormal world where there are things or places that can be used as portals. So areas where certain demonic rituals have been done can create portals. Mirrors sometimes, or windows, have been seen as portals. So psychics sometimes can pick up on where exactly portals are. Typically, it's just a large influx of where paranormal entities go to enter or leave our realm. So there's that aspect of things. These portals can be, do they go to hell? Do they go to somewhere else? I don't know. So that's part of it. But there's also, like, I think the best way I've kind of come to understand it is there's Earth, the natural physical world, but there's also like a parallel spiritual world that kind of there's like the supernatural paranormal world and then the natural physical world, and they kind of collide and intersect, and that's kind of where you get your paranormal phenomenon. And again, how exactly that plays out in terms of religious beliefs, I'm not entirely sure. Obviously there is heaven and there's hell and these kinds of things. I don't really know. I don't have it exactly figured out, but I do know that there is some interaction between the natural and the spiritual world, essentially.
Okay. I'd have to kind of agree with that myself, because it's hard to really know, because especially with how everything's taken. But to kind of follow up that question, does the Holy Spirit fall into the paranormal? Or is it more of a something greater than the paranormal realm, or something totally different?
Yeah, so that is a really good question. Because there's a very different vibe and feeling that you get when you're in a plantation at 3 a.m. in the morning, talking to some spirit through a K2 meter. And when you're praying and you feel like God or the Holy Spirit is moving in you and enlightening you or telling you to do something, or you're in church and you feel some kind of spiritual thing. So the two spiritual experiences are very different. And in my opinion, if it's a matter of which is the quick fix, which can you experience easier, absolutely the paranormal, because it is super easy to pick up on negative paranormal energy. It is far more difficult to pick up on holy energy, a holy presence. So, like, even just being in the church that I go to sometimes, I sometimes get a very, it's a very faint, subtle feeling of a holy presence that is actually there. But it's really hard to put into words because it just doesn't feel the same as like when you're investigating the paranormal necessarily. So you really have to be attuned to things far more for like a holy, a good kind of spirit. Now, as far as whether or not the Holy Spirit falls into the paranormal, like technically yes, but also no, because it is a spirit, right? It does fall into that realm. But again, our experience of the Holy Spirit, it's not, it seems to me to be something far more fleeting and that you can't really control to a science. Whereas with a paranormal location, you can kind of get a hunch like, oh, this is the most active location, this is the time period that was active, and you can kind of do things to encourage activity and more than likely get something to happen. But you can't necessarily induce that with God, So I mean, you can trigger stuff in the paranormal, but you can't always, when you can't control God, really. So it is it's a little bit of a vague answer, but the feeling is much different, and it is it's just, it's hard to explain.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if you may agree or disagree with this, but it seems paranormal is very much just a place. If you find the right place, you can get a hold of it. Whereas with a Holy Spirit of sorts, it's very much time, place, everything has to line up, and it has to be purposeful to a point. You don't just get that. It's very purposeful in the way it reaches you.
Well, there's also general spiritual wisdom that God is omnipresent. So I think if you are attuned enough spiritually, you can feel God's presence wherever you are. Now, this is, again, very esoteric and spiritual stuff that not everyone's it's not going to compute for everybody. And if you were asking me, how do I feel God's presence all the time? I don't know. I don't know the exact answer to that. But one spiritual practice that I have been doing recently that has helped remind me of God's presence is called the Jesus Prayer. It's a simple prayer that you just kind of pray on repeat. You say, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. There's different variations of it, but you can say essentially that, and you just say it over and over and over again, and you focus on the words and your breathing and try not to get distracted by anything else. It's a meditative prayer, and you should essentially be kind of bringing yourself to a more peaceful place. And that is that's one of the things that I've been trying to do more recently, and that has definitely kind of brought some sense of peace on me. That has been the most, I guess, sciencey way I can induce something like that. I'm not, these are not the most precise words to explain that.
Yeah, because there's no precise thing you can do.
Right.
It seems very much in a way of wedding kind of your body, your mind, and your spirit together for that moment, and allowing yourself to open up to receive if you shall, and also appreciating what is there. and what has been created through in kind of a way, which that has always been kind of what meditation has meant for me, is kind of taking time to sit, empty out all the outside, and just kind of bring everything together and appreciate and allow yourself to open up to that realm, that spiritual realm, in a sorts of a godly way, if that makes sense. That's what I've always viewed meditation as. Which, even if you're not religious, give meditation a shot, people. It's really a way just to fucking relax for a little bit.
Meditating is good for you. Yeah.
Yes. Alrighty. Even though some people may feel it's a non-answer, I feel like that is a very good answer, and I'm glad that we have brought the question up, and I'm glad that you answered it so elegantly, sir.
Thanks. I tried. It was just a little... Yeah, that's one of those questions that's kind of hard to put into words, or one of the answers, at least ways.
It's a very nuanced, and when you experience it, you experience it.
Right. It's like when we went to the Orthodox Church and we were like, you just got to go. Like, we can't describe it. You just got to go.
Or that when we walked into the high church of the Catholic Church, and just me and you just stood there and went,
yeah,
damn, this is something totally different.
Right.
All right. Before we get too much on a circle jerk with that one, I'd like to ask and talk on the effects and historical relevance of spirits, ghosts, etc. You know, all the paranormal, spoopy things in media, folklore, and religious ceremony, and the possibility of these being legit or caused by outside sources.
Okay. Do you have specific examples in mind?
This might kind of be a broad one, but when looking at ancient ceremony sites, and it doesn't matter really the religion, because they all share some things in common. There have been herbs and things that we have now found to be narcotic, found in places where they would burn like sage and things. And do you believe that could possibly open them up to something, even if they didn't know it? Or is that more of a kind of situational thing where that then it helped them reach that enlightened state because they were already reaching for it? Because I know
go ahead.
Ancient monks, they have found cannabis, salvia. They would partake in, some would partake in tryptamine honey, which is honey that is gotten from birds that eat on a certain flower, and it's a very narcotic experience. Do you believe there's things like that that can open you up kind of mentally to accept that, whether it's paranormal or spiritual? Or do you think that's kind of a non sequitur of sorts?
Okay, so this is an interesting question because it kind of brings up the topic of the God chemical. Are you familiar with that at all?
I've heard it. I haven't really, looked into it much, but I've heard that being discussed, especially with these things through history.
Yeah. So there have been hypotheses, and I'm not super informed on this, so it's partly me speaking out of my ass on this, but there have been hypotheses from both sides of the aisle that there is a chemical in the brain that induces spiritual experiences. And so this has led naturalists to say, it's just a God chemical. It's just a chemical firing off in your brain. God doesn't exist. It's just a mental delusion. Then again, there have been more religious people, not necessarily religious, but religious-minded people who have said there is potential with this, and we can harness this kind of experience and can actually induce it. And then this is where you get into the weird druggy people that like do LSD and have life altering experiences. So there's that. And then there's also, you know, drugs like DMT, which if David were here, he would have a field day.
Which some people consider that the God chemical because it's released in the brain during near-death experiences or even some enlightened experience. But that doesn't mean that that is the sole reason because that, again, is selling short.
Right. So, I mean, with that, that's like a lot of these kind of naturalizing and science reducing things down to a science of things. Like what you could say, like, oh, well, this neuron was firing in your brain when you were having this very spiritual experience. Well, okay, how do you know that that is the reason why I had that spiritual experience? That could have been the reaction to the spiritual experience. You could be seeing a physical reaction to you could be seeing the physical effect to a spiritual cause in that sense. So the question is, I guess the question is like, which direction does it go? Is it like the spiritual causing the physical reaction, or is the physical reaction causing the spiritual reaction? And honestly, I don't know enough about it to say whether or not, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are some forms of drugs that do put you in a more conducive state of mind to have spiritual experiences. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good thing, though, because obviously there are lots of risks with doing these kinds of things, but also it's kind of a cheat code. It's kind of like, oh, I can just get to God if I smoke LSD. You don't smoke LSD, but
if I smoke a ball before going to church.
I mean, you can rely on drugs as a means to an end, and then that's not really getting you anywhere. I mean, like, yes, you might have some extreme, crazy, vivid experience, and maybe it's life altering. Even I'm not telling people to go do this, but like, I would express a level of hesitancy about it just because we don't know enough about what it can do. There's obviously a lot of dangers that can come up with it. And I'm not saying like it's, I just don't know really. Like it could, maybe it's inducing these spiritual experiences. Maybe it's just making you more likely to be susceptible to the power of suggestion through your own psyche. It could be like a very down to earth kind of thing. Like you're just experiencing something that your brain is creating that is only going to be created through the use of this substance. There's a lot of possibilities there, but I don't know. Obviously, I just wouldn't encourage it.
Yeah, but also looking at it, the said could be said for chanting, which is very trance-inducing. I'm not sure if you experienced this, but when we did visit the Russian Orthodox Church and there was the chanting, it's easy to just let your brain just follow that and get in tune with it. So I see merit on both sides. There's obviously no correct answer. I do see where it could be beneficial in ceremonies and things, but not to rely on it. But also, same with chanting in public worship. I do see the merit behind it, but again, you can't just rely on that. You have to have that personal level and that personal experience as well. Because if you're just getting a religious experience from going to church once a week and you're not getting any other experience through the week, you're relying on that just as much as, say, a hippie relies on smoking pot to get spiritual.
Yeah,
I think
right.
It's finding a balance and more so creating a mindset in yourself to be accepting and wanting to think about these things and learn. Because I think more so than anything, whether in my sobriety or outside my sobriety, that mindset and that search has done more for me than any chemical or any public interaction could. So, and you can look at even today, there's sections of Christianity that are pot smoking hippies, and then there's sections of other religions that are like they drink ayahuasca and go on a 2-day trip in a trance-like state to kind of break down some of these harder to think things. So I do see some merit in that, but I don't think anyone should rely on that. Anyone should go out of their way for that. They should work on in their individual spirituality and trying to build that connection before relying on anything else, if that makes sense.
So I think it's kind of analogous to a person that is particularly narrow in their understanding of their faith, but they go to a church that is very emotional to get an emotional experience.
Yes.
And they draw off of that, and that's their spirituality. And their spirituality isn't really spiritual. It's just this one superficial aspect of your life that you think is much deeper. It's kind of the same way with someone who might try to go to drugs and say, oh, I'm going to experience God by doing this. Like technically, like you might be getting a little taste of it, you know, but you're not going, that's not a fully orbed, healthy way of experiencing the divine.
Yeah. Me personally, I'd say do whatever, but have a good basis to build on first before you do any crazy shit. And that's not discounting the ancient Christian monks or, you know, whomever in their experience, but that's being realistic about it because we don't have the lack of knowledge that they did. We can look at these chemicals and go, okay, this and this does this, but we also have to, it seems we're both kind of in the same, we're not discounting it, but we're saying get a good basis first.
Right. Yeah. Well, I didn't expect to go into the drug realm in this episode, but hey, here we are.
It ties into spirituality.
It does. The
paranormal, because they can make you see crazy shit.
Yeah.
Kids, don't do drugs.
Don't do drugs.
And if you are in an area where you do have legal intoxicants, do them responsibly and in moderation. Don't rely on them. Get some help.
Get some help.
And I know in the Bible and we spoke on this earlier, there's a lot of talk of spirits and not necessarily supernatural things that happen, but more things that we can attest to the spiritual realm, and whether God is putting that in action or if he's physically doing it, creating these things that do have effects.
Mm-hmm.
So is there any certain things that come to mind right this moment with you on that note? Because I know it's more than likely a total different spiritual experience than what we're talking about with the paranormal, but I feel it kind of ties in with it, if that makes sense.
Are you asking like, is there anything that I believe like God has intervened in, or what do you mean?
Well, in the Bible, you know, there's angels, demons, spirits, God, the Holy Spirit, humans. Right. Is there anything that a normal person would attest to the paranormal in the Bible that you would think might be paranormal or might be purely spiritual? Anything that comes to mind?
Okay. So is there anything like that someone might look in the Bible and say, oh, that's paranormal, or somebody might say, oh, that's spiritual, but actually it's like paranormal.
Yeah,
Or that's like a God thing, but like it's actually like a paranormal thing, like kind of getting them mistaken, basically.
yeah, is there anything that comes to mind with you? It's just one of those little side notes I had.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if there's anything specific that I could point to, but I do think we tend to we don't take everything to its logical conclusion every time with everything that we think about. So I do think that there are some times when it may be like we tend to naturalize and assume there's a material explanation for every little thing that happens. And in reality, like there might be a deeper spiritual purpose behind certain things. I know it's a really like vague and abstract answer. But there are underlying forces behind things. I'm going to sound like a stoner now, but like I don't really know how else to. I don't have a specific example because I mean, like people might want to say, "Oh, well, that's like, for example, I've known people that believe in the paranormal, but don't believe in God, and they don't believe that like." And it just makes no sense to me. Like, if you believe in the supernatural, like, why not go all the way with it? Why not actually go down that rabbit hole and ask those questions? Why would you believe in demons, but not believe in God? Like, to me, that makes no sense.
Yeah, and so, the inverse could be said too. I've met Christians who are like, "There's no such thing as ghosts. There's no such thing as paranormal." Bitch, Have you thought about this?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I just
it's
I
one
think
of those
people don't always go to the fullest extent with things. Yeah, that's my answer. It's a little vague, but hopefully it's an answer still.
And to steal something from you earlier, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Okay. You gotta if you're gonna commit.
Yeah.
Because religion in and of itself is a supernatural thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And to kind of get on a little lighter topic here, because we just got really deep for a little bit. Let's really back a little bit. What are some of your favorite or most studied examples of the paranormal? This could be in movies, books, history, etc. Whatever you feel would fit in this.
Okay, so there's a few things that come to mind. And most people know this, but like the legends about, or the stories at least, from Ed and Lorraine Warren, who were kind of like the first like actual paranormal investigators. I think like in the 60s and 70s or so. Hearing their stories, and obviously like the more dramatized forms they take in films like The Conjuring and Annabelle, those are super interesting. I just love paranormal movies in general, like just supernatural horror movies. I'm not really big on like classical like murder horror movie kind of things. I actually like stuff that seems like suspenseful and makes me ask questions about like what's actually possible. And that kind of toes the line between like reality and fantasy.
Yeah. So kind of like The Haunting in Connecticut type of deal.
Yeah. So actual The Conjuring and what's the other one? The Exorcist. Just like stuff that actually is like, I've met people that are like, I don't want to watch that because that actually can happen. That actually is real. And that's terrifying to think about. And so I don't want to watch it. But I have the exact opposite reaction, because I'm like, well, at least this is like, it's super fascinating because it's like, this is real. Like this actually happens. But this is obviously a dramatization of it. But
also,
those are the
shout out Luigi's Mansion.
Luigi's Mansion, dude. That's the
Also,
second time we've mentioned Luigi's Mansion.
Yeah, it fits perfectly. Also, a movie that I really enjoyed was Mama. I know it kind of bridges between the physical and the supernatural, but I think it's a really scary, beautiful movie.
It's really creepy.
And it kind of brings the idea of a spirit finding peace and being able to move on, which I kind of feel like happened with my grandmother's ghost, my great grandmother's ghost. And so I think that's kind of why that movie hits differently now as I'm older.
Mm-hmm.
But any video games or anything else that we can think of?
I mean, I know just in general, not video games or books, but like just in general, there's a lot of history in even some of the locations we investigated. We went to the Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, which is a really haunted place.
Oh, I would love to visit like old hospitals and mental asylums.
Didn't get a ton of things that happened that night, unfortunately, but you win some, you lose some. Sometimes you drive many, many hours away for something that didn't turn out to be anything. It's fine.
I love all the music and stories that come out of New Orleans, especially around the above ground crypts.
The Waverly Hills Sanatorium also. There's just, I mean, there's a lot of places that's like, oh, okay, these are like legendary haunted locations that it's just super fascinating to hear about them. But also they're massive and kind of terrifying and daunting to be like actually investigating. So
if my old hotel wasn't like an active hotel, it would have been terrifying to be in, because and it's on the smaller side, but it's still massive. There's 4 levels. And if anybody wants to, look into the history, and no, I'm not full of shit, it's Hotel Aiken, formerly the Commercial Hotel, formerly the Holly House. You guys are more than welcome to look into it.
Yeah.
And the finish is off here. Kind of the same question I asked before regarding, or the question that was asked before regarding aliens. Do you believe, and granted, we see irrefutable evidence that there is the supernatural and paranormal, but do you believe that the public would be able to grasp that and be able to digest it if there, something irrefutable happened? Let's say the president is out there talking and there's a figure that's not there that walks behind him and go, ooga booga, I'm a ghost, and goes away. Something that is so clear as day couldn't be debunked.
Right.
Do you think that the public would be ready for that if they ever will be?
Yeah, so there's a multifaceted response to that. I think that there are a lot of people who already believe in this and who want to believe and who are willing to believe, so they believe. I think there's also a lot of people who really don't want to believe no matter what. And I think there's some biases sometimes that come into play when it comes to these things. And, that's obviously goes both ways. But I think, even if there might be irrefutable, air quotes, irrefutable evidence, there will be some people who try and say, oh, well, it wasn't that, it was this, it was probably not even really a thing. And so, I mean, there's going to be people that are still going to deny it. I think we're already at the point where if you want to believe in the paranormal, there's enough evidence out there for you to believe in it. There's enough good evidence. There's enough people that you can go talk to and hear from them, their experiences. Or it's not that big. You can go out and meet a paranormal team and ask to join in. Like, you can do that, So, I mean, if you're on the fence, like, there's ways of going about it to not be on the fence anymore. So there is, there's enough out there for people to believe if they want to believe. But if there were irrefutable evidence, ultimately, I do think, it's definitely easier for people to digest the paranormal than it is aliens, I think, which is ironic. But I think more people are willing and already do believe in the paranormal than aliens.
Yeah. And I think the only thing I want to say is if you're on the fence, or even if you don't believe or you do believe, I'd recommend checking out some haunted places. First, prepare yourself and do some research. Don't bring any negative things into your life that you don't need.
Right.
But, and haunted doesn't necessarily have to mean negative either. Don't get that idea, because there's places where there's paranormal things, but it's not malicious. It's not necessarily evil. It's just there.
Right.
Go to some of these places and see for yourself. You know, I worked in a haunted hotel. I've lived in houses that have had paranormal activity. I mean, our whole area we grew up in was ripe with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so go out there, get these experiences, create this dialogue, but don't bring a Ouija board. You're going to ask some questions and you're going to get fucked up.
Yeah, be safe. Don't do Ouija boards. Don't do seances. Don't speak with the creepy lady down the street that says she can look into a crystal ball and tell you your future, or read tarot cards to you or anything.
I'd say that's bullshit. That's not paranormal. That's just some old kooky shit.
I mean, it might be, but it might also not be. So just don't.
Yeah.
Just don't.
Think of this as your supernatural condom. Just fucking don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, go out and get these experiences, visit these places, because not only are they paranormal, but they're ripe with history, and everyone needs some history in their life. Don't be a little punk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I don't know if there's anything else. I think we've covered a lot about ghosts. We covered a lot more about ghosts than we did aliens, but that's fine.
Yeah, that's just kind of the nature of us as people.
Yeah. We care
Especially
more
with our
about the paranormal
experiences
than we do aliens.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I care. I very much care if there's aliens, but I know that there is the paranormal. So
yeah.
But yeah, anything else you want to say?
Sorry that David. Well, first of all, like, was quiet for like most of this episode, and then he just kind of silently disappeared. And then, so sorry about that. That David hasn't been here for like half the episode. Also, just general maintenance stuff. Send in your questions to us if you have any questions regarding anything we've talked about. Shoot them into facingthegatespod@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Facing the Gates. Share it with your friends, that kind of thing.
You can tweet us. You can comment on our Facebook stuff. I'm not on social media much anymore, so I don't know what all we're on. You can ask questions there. You can email them. On YouTube.
Yeah.
I don't know how you'd send us a carrier pigeon or smoke signal, but if you can figure that one out, do that. I don't care. Just ask questions.
You've got 3 different places now, since we're all in different places and different states, each of us. So, you know, I guess technically your odds are higher now to finding one of us, because we're in 3 houses instead of 2. But anyway, I don't know what I'm saying now. Yeah, I think we're going to wrap it up. This is actually the last episode of this kind of mini series that we've done in between the church tours and the next one. So the next episode, we're going to finally actually begin the politics series. So we're going to hate each other by the end of it. And then you're going to be like, at last, blood. I've been waiting for this.
Well, people, don't forget, we've talked about these pretty in detail before. We're still friends at the end of it.
Yeah, most of
even
these,
if I'm a filthy communist.
Most of these conversations we've pretty much had in some shape, way, or form prior to recording them. There's been a couple that we haven't like talked in depth on, but a lot of these are like just more in depth versions of those conversations.
Yeah, we've definitely at least planted the seed, and now we're tending to the garden, so to say.
Yeah. So anyway, we just as a quick reminder, we're ending the show. soon enough. So definitely send in your questions and listen to the episodes and share it with your friends, because it's not going to be around forever. And yeah, next time we will begin kind of an introductory episode to the politics series. We won't be starting with actual specific issues next episode. We're going to be kind of talking about the purpose of government and laws, these kinds of things, kind of like the philosophy of politics, and kind of slowly segueing our way into actual specific topics where we will fight each other through the internet, probably.
Yeah. I mean, I might drive up there and fist fight him, and then we'd be friends again.
Yeah. I mean, I'll have to wait for you to get here, but 4 hours from now, maybe.
It'd be a long walk, man.
I'll probably be asleep. Probably
that's why I want to catch you. I'm just going to snuff you in your sleep with a pillow.
Great. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's about it. David will be here next time, probably.
Hopefully.
Yeah. So anyway, I think it's been real.
I think it's been fun.
I think it's been real fun.
I'd have to agree.
I'd have to agree also.
And we shall see you guys next week.
Yeah. All right. See
Bye.
ya. Later.